Now, Mary Katharine Ham, Brian Wilson, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority. 105.9 FM and AM 630.
WMAL. 5:37 on the Morning Majority. Brian Wilson is here. Mary Katharine Ham. Brian Neiman's still on vacation, but he will be back Monday. Well, we had some sad news yesterday. Right after we got off the air, we heard that friend of the show, friend of freedom, friend of conservatives, Andrew Breitbart passed away Thursday, very early Thursday morning, just past midnight. He was out for a walk and collapsed, and someone saw him and called 911, but he was unable to be revived. He is the father of 4 kids. He leaves a wife behind, and just an incredible shock, so much that people thought it might be some sort of hoax by his political adversaries or some sort of practical joke for a little while.
My initial instinct was somebody's website got hacked.
Right.
That's what I thought it was initially.
Well, at 43, you think, surely that can't be the case. And for anybody who's met Andrew Breitbart, he was so full of life that it seemed improbable that this could be possible. And yet that was the truth. And, you know, as my little brother texted me yesterday about it and said we needed 20 Andrew Breitbarts and we just lost the only one we had.
Yeah. Which
I think is a great way of thinking about it. He had so much energy, and I would sometimes look at him and go, maybe I pull punches too often. Like he would get in people's faces. He would go hard after the left. He would say they're shameless and I am going to hold a mirror up to them and make them pay for what they do. And really called a lot of people to the carpet and made a lot of enemies along the way. But I want to talk a little bit about before he became a public figure. He wasn't a public figure for very long. It was just in the last couple of years. Before that, he was this incredible internet entrepreneur, part of the entire basis of the new media. He was in the background of the Drudge Report for years, starting in the mid-90s, constantly updating. And they saw the writing on the wall when it came to that stuff very early on, he and Matt Drudge. He later went on to consult with Arianna Huffington and help her create the Huffington Post. So if you've been an integral part of the Drudge Report and the Huffington Post, 2 of the most popular, successful internet news entities there are, that, of course, straddle the
entire ideological spectrum,
yes,
right.
If you're that guy, then you're just a really amazing sort of conundrum of a human being. And that's what he was, in addition to being an uplifting and cheerful, interesting person.
You know, I don't think I've ever met him personally, but I always admire people who find their way onto the national scene, who are passionate and happy warriors. I even admire people on the left who take on with great passion and look at it as with great zeal and look at it as fun to have these discussions of national importance. And he clearly was one of those people who just relished the battle.
Yes, he really did.
He was a character. He was a force of nature. And I think we are better off in this country when those kind of people are involved in the national dialogue. And I'm very sad to hear the news. It was quite surprising to hear the news. He actually was a friend of this station and actually filled in a moment. We're going to hear a little bit of something he did the last time he was on this show. But, I mean, what a tremendous loss, and taken way too young. And the other thing that I'm a little troubled by is the vehemence that you just heard Governor Huckabee talk about, in which some on the left responded to his death. It's shameful, really.
Although I would say, if Andrew were looking down, he would say, go ahead and just retweet all of that and make sure everyone knows that I was right about these people. That's what he wants people to know. Because, and to be fair, there were some liberals who were very, very not entirely kind, but very respectful in their responses to him, and just said, he was a worthy adversary, and that's important too, that not everybody was a jerk.
And one of the things that has emerged, and I'd like to know a little bit more about it, but apparently there is a report out there that he was in talks with CNN to do a show with, of all people, former Congressman Anthony Weiner. It was going to be sort of like, a left and right, discussion.
Which would have just
Hannity-Combs
been
kind of
one
thing.
of the great spectacles of the TV age.
Because
that would have been.
We all know that Andrew Breitbart was very instrumental in revealing all of those tweets and the pictures and all that stuff that sort of brought down the political career of Anthony Weiner. And to think that they might have been working side by side in a show on CNN. Now, look, that said, a lot of things get discussed at cable networks about possibilities and ideas for show. A lot of them never come to fruition. But wouldn't that have been something?
My goodness, one of my favorite Andrew moments, and I think for a lot of people it was his taking of the podium at the Anthony Weiner press conference, because it's so indicative of his ability to be a showman, to be out there, and to sort of turn the media construct on its head. He figured, I don't know, there's an empty podium, I'm going to go up there and talk. I've got the entire press gathered here. I'm going to go talk to him. And he just went up there and did it, which was hilarious and amazing. And minutes later, Anthony Weiner comes out and has to apologize in part to Andrew Breitbart for having called him a liar for a week while he's revealing the actual truth about his dalliances online. So, and that's the thing, too. For all of the criticism that he got, and he didn't always get every single story right, and people will rightfully have their criticisms of the ones he got wrong, but a lot of it was he was getting stuff right that the left didn't want to deal with. And so that's why he was called a liar. That's why he was called a provocateur. He was breaking news that was real news that no one else was dealing with.
One of the story, of course, the Anthony Weiner story was one, but also the Acorn story.
Right.
I mean, Acorn basically got disassembled by Andrew Breitbart.
Yep. And James O'Keefe working as a team. It really, what I'm always was most impressed with his entrepreneurial spirit, and just for the fact that being behind pretty much all of the conservative and sort of new, not even just conservative, like I said, Huffington Post, but the new media in general, just sort of knowing what was coming and being ready for it, and then suddenly deciding, well, I'm going to be a warrior using the tools that I have created. And he did a heck of a job of it.
Yeah, Andrew Breitbart, 43 years old.
WMAL FM Woodbridge, Washington.
WMAL Washington.
WRQX HD2. Breaking news and the inside story.
8:50 on the Morning Majority. Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham here. Brian Neiman on vacation. I'm pretty excited today because I was just perusing the old Facebook, and I knew it was coming up soon, but my friend Smitty, a Marine who's been in Afghanistan, deployed for 366 days,
Hoorah!
is coming home tomorrow to his beautiful wife, Geraldine. That's right, Smitty and Geraldine. They are in their early 30s, although they sound like they're 73. And they have two beautiful kids. One who his son just turned 1, and he's barely seen little Mason, and so he will come home and get to hang out with them. And I hope to see him very soon. It's always, especially the last week or so, watching the violence escalate in Afghanistan. I'm sure for her it was nerve-wracking, and it's always a great day when one of my buddies and one of our heroes gets to come home safe to his family and eat barbecue and drink beer and hang out with his kids.
Yeah,
God bless him.
Be back on good American soil. Well, all the best to them. I want to stop for a moment as we wrap up this program and pay tribute to Andrew Breitbart. This was a man who I never met him. You actually have met him on a couple of occasions. I
ran into him frequently and luckily got to host the show with him at times, which was a blast. Yeah,
a conservative warrior, a happy warrior who unexpectedly passed away yesterday, or I guess the night before, at the age of 43 of some kind of, apparently some heart condition. He'd been having some problems with his heart and not feeling well. Went out to the corner pub, engaged in a 2-hour discussion of things political with people that he met there in the pub, and by all accounts was in rare form, and on the walk home literally fell down and was never recovered from it. He was on the show about 3 months ago as a guest on the phone, and he had an interesting story to tell. Of course, remember, he was the guy who sort of broke the Anthony Weiner story, and he was telling a story about a chance encounter he had down at Cafe Milano here in Washington. Take a listen.
Well,
I'm showing off Cafe Milano to my friend Kent from Los Angeles, who wanted a taste of my life when I come to D.C. I say it's crazy. It's different than my life in L.A., where I have 4 kids and a pretty normal life. And I said, Cafe Milano is the CNBC place. We went there pretty late. I think we were there at around 10 o'clock at night on Friday, and it just wasn't at capacity. It wasn't like your typical, Thursday night there, or Tuesday night, or whatever the popular night is. And we were just settling our bill, and my friend Kent said, "You will not believe who just sat down 2 tables away from us, and the table in between us was empty." I said, "Who?" He says, "Anthony Weiner and his wife."
Oh, my God.
I said, I don't believe it. I do not believe it. And at that moment, I look over there, and there are 4 people, 2 of whom are situating their chairs now conspicuously to put their backs to us. And I assume that those were Huma and Anthony. I left the place, somewhat startled by it. Never actually saw their faces. Had to trust that my friend that Kent was telling the truth. All I did during that period of time was call my wife up in Los Angeles, and I asked what I needed to ask. What do I do? And her response was, do nothing. Pay your bill and leave. And that's what we did.
Wow.
Smart wife.
Yeah.
That was Andrew Breitbart on our air doing one of the things he did best, which was tell a good story. He will be greatly missed. Great dad and activist and beloved husband.